They do not want you to think for yourself. That's the truth most people never confront, because confronting it demands you either rise above the system or become swallowed by it. From the moment you take your first breath, they begin the process. Conditioning, shaping, silencing. You are not raised to be free, you are raised to obey, and the cruelest part is how subtle it is. No chains, no bars, just expectations, approval, disapproval, a raised eyebrow, a withheld smile. You are trained like an animal through invisible cues, rewarded when you conform, punished when you question, and this they call civilization. You're told obedience is virtue, but who benefits from your obedience? Not you, not really. They teach you to suppress your instincts, to second guess your perceptions, to doubt the fire inside you that screams when something is wrong. Because once they've dulled that fire, you become manageable, predictable, safe for them, never for yourself. You walk the lines they draw for you, even as your soul rots behind the mask. You nod, you smile, you agree, and slowly they replace your voice with theirs. Until one day, you can't even hear your own thoughts without wondering if they're approved. The world is not run by brute force anymore. It's run by psychological warfare. They don't need to cage you. They just need to convince you that you're already free. And most fall for it. They confuse comfort with peace, permission with purpose, and distraction with fulfillment. But comfort is the tool they use to sedate you. They sell you ease, luxury, and entertainment, and in return, they take your awareness, your edge, your clarity. They want you distracted, entertained, softened, because a focused, unyielding mind is the most dangerous weapon a man can have, and they know it. Control is never advertised as control. It's disguised as care, as structure, as safety. But real safety does not require submission. Only tyranny demands that you kneel before it and smile. They orchestrate fear to keep you obedient, fear of loss, fear of rejection, fear of failure. They make you believe you're always one mistake away from being cast out, from losing everything, and so you shrink, you adapt, you comply, you compromise not because you want to, but because the cost of resistance feels too high. But that is the illusion, that fear is their invention. The greatest power is not in domination, it is in silent influence, in getting you to choose what they wanted all along, without ever feeling forced. That is how they win, not through oppression but through your own mind turning against you. They don't need to fight you. They just need to whisper into your fear and let you do the rest. That's why most men never break free. Because the war isn't out there, it's inside. And until you reclaim your mind, you will obey, even when you believe you're free. They study your psychology more than you study yourself. They know how to provoke desire, how to manufacture consent, how to manipulate emotion. You think you choose your opinions, your tastes, your goals. No. Most of what you believe was planted, carefully, over time, through repetition, through symbols, through trusted mouths, and because it didn't feel like an order, you accepted it as your own. That is their brilliance, making you believe the cage is a palace. But here's the harsh reality. If your mind can be led, it can be used. If your emotions can be predicted, you can be bought. And if your self-worth is based on external validation, you can be controlled. That's why detachment is the first step to freedom. Not detachment from life, but from the illusion, from the need to be liked, accepted, celebrated. You must stop chasing approval like a starving dog chases scraps. Because every ounce of your hunger is a handle they will use to steer you. Power doesn't belong to the loud. It belongs to the clear, the cold, the composed, the man who can walk through noise and see patterns. Who can feel emotion without being ruled by it? Who can hear a lie without needing to react? This is the man they fear, because he cannot be moved by guilt, by shame, by pressure. He cannot be baited, manipulated, or played. And most of all, he cannot be used. They will call him cold, arrogant, detached, because they need to shame what they cannot control. But let them talk, let them try, because when you are no longer seeking permission, you become untouchable. They only have power over you when you play their game. When you step outside the board, their rules dissolve, their influence crumbles, their tactics fail, and they are left exposed, powerless in front of the man who sees through it all. To break free, you must develop a second sight, one that sees behind smiles, that hears what isn't said, that reads intent, not words. Most communication is allied, disguised threats, subtle manipulations, carefully veiled agendas. Learn to see it, learn to decode the games, not to play them, but to render them useless against you, because when you see the strings, the puppet show loses its power. The calmest man in the room is usually the one with the greatest control. Not over others, but over himself, and that is the only control that matters. You must become a fortress, still, watchful, aware. Let others react, let them flail and explode. You stay unmoved, because the moment you are provoked, you are predictable. And when you are predictable, you are vulnerable. They want your emotions to be your leash. Cut it, sever it, replace impulse with intention. You do not need to convince anyone. You do not need to explain your path. You only need to master yourself, and everything else bends. Influence is not in words, it's in presence, in clarity, in discipline, in the energy that radiates from a man who does not flinch, does not chase, and does not need. That is true power, not in domination, but in indifference to the bait, in the ability to walk away and mean it. They fear the man who obeys no voice but his own, not because he is dangerous to others, but because he is dangerous to the system. He cannot be harnessed, herded, or steered, and so they will try to discredit him, isolate him, shame him. But this man does not fold. He watches, he calculates, he understands. He is not reactive. He is surgical. Cold, not cruel, clear, not callous, and with every step he regains what was stolen. His mind, his will, his sovereignty. You are not here to be liked. You are not here to be managed. You are not here to decorate someone else's story. You are here to see clearly, to live precisely, to act deliberately, to walk through this world untouched by the noise, unmoved by the current, and unafraid of the storm, because the storm cannot break a man who is already free within. They cannot take what you no longer give, they cannot influence what you no longer absorb, and they cannot control what you no longer fear. When you reach that place, you are no longer a subject, you are a force. Silent, sharp, uncompromising, and that is what true freedom looks like, not in chaos, but in mastery, not in rebellion, but in self-rule. That is where obedience ends, and that is where your power begins. So, once you understand the game, truly see it for what it is, you no longer play it the same way. You stop reacting. You stop explaining yourself. You stop handing over your emotions like loose change to every manipulative beggar that knocks on the door of your attention. You don't waste your breath defending your name in rooms that are designed to twist it. You stop looking for fairness in people who trade in distortion, and that stillness, that silence, is your greatest weapon. Because silence is unnerving to those who rely on chaos. It forces them to listen to their own thoughts, to question their own intentions. It forces them to confront the emptiness behind their performance. When you go still, when you no longer respond to their bait, they panic, because control is slipping. Your silence becomes resistance. Your calm becomes rebellion. Your refusal to engage becomes the echo that exposes them. People don't expect you to be emotionally sovereign. They expect you to be predictable, to respond like clockwork, to react with fire when they throw gasoline. But when you don't, when you stand there unaffected, measured, unreadable, they start to see that their tools no longer work on you. That's when the mask slips. That's when the smiling face turns to a scowl, and the compliments turn to insults, because your indifference enraged them more than any insult could. They didn't want you to be free. They wanted you to be obedient. And now that you're not, they'll punish the distance, but you won't flinch, you won't justify it, because you've seen what lies behind the curtain. You've seen how power feeds on your reaction, and now you starve it. You sit in that tension, you watch them unravel, you let them feel the hollowness of their own manipulation. See, manipulation always relies on urgency. It wants you to act fast, speak fast, feel fast. It wants your nervous system to short-circuit so that you don't question anything. It rushes you to agree, to give in, to believe the version of reality being sold to you. But when you slow it all down, when you pause and breathe and sit in the silence, you regain the power they tried to steal. You see the strings behind their words, you feel the shift in tone, you spot the flattery right before it becomes leverage. You sense the trap before your foot hits the floor. Most people never get to that level. They're too afraid of the silence, too afraid of being seen as cold or distant. But detachment isn't coldness, it's control, and control is the beginning of freedom. They'll say you've changed, they'll say you've become heartless. But what they really mean is that you've become unreadable. They can't access you the way they used to. They can't guilt you into decisions or shame you into submission. They can't trigger the same insecurities they once did. You've removed the levers they used to pull, and so now they call you names in an attempt to provoke the old version of you, the one that would chase validation, the one that would fold under pressure. But that version no longer exists. You buried him the moment you realized your peace was worth more than their approval. You let him die in the silence of self-reflection. You walked away from the need to be liked, to be understood. And that's when you became untouchable. This doesn't mean you're emotionless. It means your emotions are no longer up for negotiation. You feel deeply, but privately. You grieve, but in silence. You care, but not at the cost of your self-respect. You've redefined strength, not as loud defiance, but quiet resilience. You let others underestimate you. You let them misread your calm as weakness. Because when it's time to move, to strike, to walk away, you do it without announcement. You let your actions speak with a finality that no explanation could match. And in that silence, your power multiplies. What they can't understand, they will try to destroy. What they can't control, they will call dangerous. But you don't shrink yourself to fit their comfort. You don't soften your edges for those who only want to dull your shine. You don't perform emotional labor for people who don't even know how to be honest with themselves. And that alone makes you rare, because while the world plays its games of pretense and performance, you stand still, rooted, calm, watching, waiting, unbothered. This kind of power comes at a cost. You will lose people. You will shed relationships that were built on your compliance. You will feel the ache of detachment, the weight of solitude. But in that solitude, you will find yourself. You will reclaim the parts of you that were scattered in other people's expectations. You will see the beauty in being misunderstood, the clarity in not needing to be explained, the serenity in knowing you are no longer emotionally accessible to those who abuse that privilege. You learn to observe without reacting, to listen without absorbing, to witness dysfunction without getting pulled into it. You don't save people from their own chaos. You don't carry burdens that don't belong to you. You draw the line and keep it sharp. Because boundaries aren't just protection, they're declarations. They say, this is who I am now, this is what I no longer allow, this is how far you can go, and you enforce them without guilt, because guilt is how they trained you. It was always the tool used to keep you small, to keep you apologizing for having needs, for having a spine. But now, you wear your boundaries like armor, not to hurt, but to protect, not to punish, but to preserve. And the beauty is, the stronger your boundaries become, the quieter your life gets, the noise fades, the chaos retreats, the people who thrived on your confusion disappear. What's left is clarity, stillness, peace, and it's in that peace that you finally breathe. You finally feel what it means to exist without the weight of performance. You are no longer a puppet in someone else's theater. You are the observer now, the strategist. And that vantage point is everything. You don't warn people anymore. You don't teach them how to treat you. You simply show them what happens when they don't. You let the silence do what words never could. You let the distance speak louder than confrontation, because energy doesn't lie, presence doesn't beg, and power never chases. The ones meant to stay will match your peace. The rest will reveal themselves through the noise of their absence. Either way, you win. Either way, you remain unmoved. There's something terrifying about a person who is no longer emotionally entangled with the need to be seen. Someone who doesn't perform, doesn't explain, doesn't defend. Just moves, quietly, deliberately, with surgical precision. That's what you've become, a calm storm, a presence that can't be manipulated, can't be guilted, can't be swayed, because you've made peace with yourself. And that internal peace it radiates. It commands respect without words. It silences rooms without force. You don't react anymore, you calculate. You don't argue, you observe. You don't escalate, you exit. You don't plead, you pause. That's the new version of you, refined by solitude, sharpened by silence, hardened by truth. You no longer trade authenticity for acceptance. You no longer barter your spirit for proximity. You know that real connection doesn't require you to lose yourself. It doesn't demand your silence, your suffering, or your sacrifice. When you carry yourself with this energy, everything changes. Conversations shift. People reveal themselves faster. The fake ones can't stand the weight of your presence. The real ones are drawn to your calm like gravity. You no longer chase, you attract, but only what aligns with your standard. Anything less disqualifies itself through your stillness. That's the paradox of power. It's quiet, it's subtle, it doesn't need to dominate to be felt. It simply exists, and in its presence, everything else must rise or fall away. You've stopped needing the world to understand you. You've stopped needing closure from those who were never honest to begin with. You've stopped expecting apologies from people who only apologize to regain control. You've stopped participating in narratives that don't serve your peace, and in doing so, you've reclaimed your mind, your energy, your time, no longer distracted, no longer accessible, no longer reactive.